Thank you for
Music is
watching.
the most important thing to me in my life. It is my favorite type of art, and it has been with me for, it has been special to me for a very long time. Pretty much since I was like, I don't know, 4 maybe. And I've talked about music on this channel many times, almost always in a positive light. Um, I very rarely have I stayed away from opinions for the most part, outside of like tier lists maybe. But I love talking about music. I love talking about various types of music. I love making music. It is a very important aspect to my life. But something that I wanted to talk about at some point, I just didn't know how to discuss it at the time. I think I'm ready to talk about it now. And I want to talk about the idea of, or even maybe just the feeling in general, whenever a genre or a type of music specifically is ruined for you. Something that once brought you comfort is now something you can't listen to anymore for whatever reason. And I have two examples of that, and I could have talked about it in my other video, but or even any really video I've talked about my personal life, but I just feel like sometimes it didn't make sense to add it. Could have made the video longer than it needed to be, and I felt like it's more beneficial to do it in a separate video. So the first time I will also will say that I do recommend you watch any of those videos that I discuss my personal life. Specifically, the latest one is probably the best one to this for the example and to understand how pretty much these things came to be. I recommend that video specifically. My elementary school went from junior kindergarten to grade 8, and in that time I was bullied pretty much almost every grade outside of maybe like kindergarten really roughly into like grade 1. It was really in grade 2 and upwards that I've had experiences that I can at least remember that were like is worse than anything that's happened prior to that. But yeah, I was bullied through every grade at that elementary school. There were times where I did fight back, and I was the one that got in trouble. I've dealt with a lot of there was a lot of unfair, I guess maybe biasness, I don't know. But a lot of the time when a kid should have been in far worse trouble than they weren't for physically assaulting me. Let's clarify that. But whenever I would fight back or anything, I just wouldn't. I would get like week suspension, 2 week suspension, even something I didn't even do 2 months later, got a suspension for I think that was the 2 week suspension one. But yeah, a lot of that. I have PTSD. I was diagnosed with PTSD in I believe it was the first half of grade 5. Um, and because of that, I ended up switching or moving from immersion to core. And then that was pretty good up until the last day of grade 6 where I got punched in the stomach. And then from then on, I just ended up having like some like friends and off friends, and then them turned to bullies and stuff like that. That so bad that those experiences affected my social skills in high school, my social anxiety, depression, everything that became more prevalent and became a really big problem. But up until that point, switch from grade 8 to grade 9 specifically, I realized that by moving from, elementary school to high school, I had to try to, I had to move on with my life. All that stuff was past me, new experiences, whatever. But in that time, I couldn't be reminded by things from that time. And even to this day, I still can't really it's hard to talk about those situations, and it's hard to talk about really any any piece of the memories to those years specifically. And I kind of tie that to the the era, just 2010 era in general, up until 2019 or 2018. I realized that I cannot listen to any pop, any like really most popular pop song from the 2010s because of how much I want to forget those years specifically. Ties up the songs of those years and the radio specifically ties to those past experiences to the point where it's just I have to move on. I cannot uh, date myself back to that time. Um, and I realized that it's kind of hard and kind of weird to discuss this as a concept, but a lot of people just they can't enjoy those things anymore once they're ruined, and that is something that, well, I will say I didn't enjoy a lot of the music from that point, because I, my mom and my dad were both into more rock stuff. Um, I still have to deal with certain whatever radio station, will play whatever song. You still have to deal with that. And I think this kind of elevated my journey into looking to music that was like for me rather than whatever everybody else found popular, the alternative journey, specifically from that point on. I think as in order to grow as a person, I think some people like will have to eventually like accept the past, and I think you're supposed to accept the past. I don't know, but for me, I kind of just gave up in that with that, and I prefer to move on forward and not look back. Anything from that point on, up until recently, I just stood like put it behind me. The second thing that was ruined for me, and I'll be honest, it was primarily through my own stupidity. Um, after going into high school, I was fine in grade 9 because I ended up making a new friend, but he ended up moving away the next grade. Um, I still, when he left, I ended up developing more social anxiety, I think from that point on, because I was skeptical of becoming friends with his friends, and I was skeptical of just if I would have friends in general. I would associate myself with various groups of people, and I enjoyed my time with those groups of people. I made them laugh, they made me laugh. Um, but outside of that, I still had that negative anxiety feeling that, it didn't matter because they're talking me on my back, or they're just gonna, what's the word, exile me, exclude me, which didn't happen. It was in my head, but that ended up turning into depression. My anxiety got so bad to the point where it became depression, and that was grade 10. In grade 10, the start of well, really, in grade 9, I was revisiting old video game soundtracks, and then specifically the one that became the most important to me was Burnout Paradise. And then that ended up making me fall into listening to, well, actually, then I ended up watching Clone High, and that kind of took me into the emo pipeline, discovering what Midwest emo through well, some Midwest emo songs through Clone High, like American Football. I think that's I know I'm missing more, but other stuff like that. And then eventually I found the emo revival stuff and ended up watching a channel like Nate the Mate. He ended up following me on Instagram at one point. Um, but a lot of the music I ended up listening to in that time that I was depressed was primarily the Midwest emo revival stuff. So Free Throw, Modern Baseball, um, Brave Bird, like a whole like I could just like list a bunch. But yeah, like all that stuff. Uh, and as well along with like more post-hardcore and scene like pop punk stuff as well. But that was more and more I kept growing. closer towards like the Midwest emo stuff. Even stuff I don't know if like Sorority Noise was considered Midwest emo, but Sorority Noise was the band that I definitely connected with the most with their lyrics. And from then, I ended up watching the uh, documentary on modern baseball, I believe the night before I was thinking about ending it all. And I think it was from then on that I, after that experience of the next day where I ended up telling a stranger I didn't know my plan and then not going through with it, going to school, getting a counselor and all that, I realized that I was going to be a different person then. And from then on, I feel like it still took me about 2 years after, well, 2000, it took me about 2 more years after that before going full, putting my mind directly towards my new career path and focusing more on helping people than I would just, I don't know what I was thinking of. I thought of various careers at that point, but more specifically, um, that day was the day I saw the light, and my light was that I need to grow up. And I think a lot of people associate Midwest emo, or more specifically Midwest emo revival, with the sound of youth. A lot of stuff that you do as a teenager, a lot of stuff that you regret as a teenager. That from then, it's made it very hard to continue listening to that stuff if I was going to be 20 and, I didn't have a good high school life because of COVID and the pandemic, and a lot of the stuff that I ended up doing that I regret, a lot of stuff that I even the stuff prior to that that I did that I regret too, that I feel like it was ruined for me. I think that in one way it was a natural progression to move on from anything that resembles my old self or my teenage self. And another way, I think that because of what I did back in 2019 and um, the almost permanent mistake that I almost made was also something that it was reckless. And I do think that even, some of that music is also reckless with their lyrics and how they view certain situations that it was that point that uh, made me realize that, I think there is a certain time where you eventually learn your lessons. You realize that while the art itself doesn't influence you to do those things, but you are relating to it at that time where you are doing those things that I don't think it's good for you anymore. And that's kind of my realization that I came with, that I realized with that genre. Not to mention the tons of memes about manipulate the male manipulator music and stuff like that. Well, at the time would see that stuff and I'd be like, oh yeah, I get it. I found it funny, and then I realized no, no, it's music that definitely resonates with people that are like that because I was like that, and I don't know where to move on from there. But to this day, it's very hard to return to those specific bands. I do like more like I like stuff like Arm's Length. I think that nowadays my music taste is well still all over the place, and I ended up liking almost various different kind of versions of what I can't listen to now or I don't listen to now. Specifically when it comes to pop music, I love hyper pop, and I love music in that um, same sphere. I love art pop, for example. I like that type of stuff. And then when it comes to Midwest emo, I like modern screamo stuff. Uh, Anything that sounds like 90s primarily I like. What I feel like the 2010s revival stuff definitely took influence from the 90s. I don't think there weren't a lot of bands that really felt like the 90s. I love the Adventurers though. The Adventurers were so good. And I also something that I also did buy recently, well not recently, but I bought whenever it was announced was the Run for Cover music video collection. I did buy that, and that's something that I is an exception to everything. Like I keep that. I will watch the compilation uh, every now and then. I think a lot of people tend to have these types of experiences, maybe not to the same extent as I do, but a part of me that like when I really love music at the end of the day, like I just I just think about what's to come. I think about my present. I think about the future. I don't think back to the past. A lot of the music that I listen to nowadays is a mixture between new stuff and listening to old stuff that I'd never even heard before, or listening to various soundtracks for things that I'm either going to watch or stuff that I might not watch, but the music's good. That I don't think about that stuff anymore. But I do feel like it's therapeutic to make a video like this talking about this type of thing because I think a lot of people tend to like mention it here and there in videos where it's like, oh yeah, I can't listen to this anymore because of this experience. But I wanted to go like more in depth and discuss why I can't listen to these two genres anymore. But that's it. Thank you for listening. If this helps you, I'm glad. If you have experience that you want to mention, feel free to. No judgment here. Doesn't matter how messed up this life is. We keep progressing